The views presented in this program are not meant to express the specific views of the Lafayette Bible Fellowship. You are listening to the Vigilance Radio Network.
Good morning, and welcome back to the podcast, Culture and Sanity. We were gone for the last month, I guess it was. Just about a month. A couple of us were on some vacation. That was about 10 years in the making, so we're back now with episode number 3, season 2. And there's some things we got to talk about, not the least of which is the Michael Jackson ongoing saga, I guess you'll call it, that has resurfaced in the last month or so. I think we briefly touched on it last time, but it continues to be a trending topic and developing narratives and issues that we want to talk about. So that's going to be probably, I imagine, a big portion of our show. So Michael Jackson, there's things like something popped up with John Wayne. So maybe one of Pastor Monty's heroes. You like John Wayne? No?
It's all right.
Really? Interesting. I took you for a John Wayne guy. Older people, westerns. You like westerns? Not too much.
I like westerns, but I don't really have any heroes. People idolize.
Okay.
Actors and what have you.
What about Karen Carpenter?
No.
What about Tom Selleck?
No.
What about? I didn't even mean Tom Selleck. I meant
Stacy Keach.
No. No. Wow, I can't. Steven Seagal.
Kojak.
Steven Seagal.
Telly Savalas?
Telly Savalas.
Steven Seagal.
Steven Seagal. I like his acting.
Oh yeah, Steven Seagal, totally.
If push comes to shove, we're gonna call him one of your movie heroes.
He totally is.
I don't.
He likes to quote Steven Seagal in Under Siege.
Well, there are certain comments that he makes that's just great,
Anyways, so that we have The Office resurfacing in the news. Something we touched on just briefly, I think, last season, early on, as far as the acceptability of a show like The Office in today's climate. So that's there. Alyssa Milano continues to be in the news for bold claims she makes. And then there's things like Captain Marvel. So some of these things we may or may not get to just because, like I said, the Michael Jackson thing is a big topic. So as Josh is getting the technical side of things going, maybe we'll start off with something less whatever. So John Wayne. So maybe I'll throw it to you first. So John Wayne. So by the way, you were added to the thread, yeah, to our little chat thing. Are you tracking those articles and stuff? I know you keep up on the news in general.
I'm looking at some of those things.
Did you see the John Wayne thing?
I am aware that there's some controversy, and
So just before you start. So John Wayne has made his way into the news. All these dead people keep popping up in the news.
That chair is terrible.
The thing is that it's not appropriate. Dead people can't defend themselves.
Okay, yeah. Let me give the context of why John Wayne is in the news. So John Wayne is in the news, and people, whoever people is, I'm not sure. There might be just a petition going around to remove his name from John Wayne Airport outside of Los Angeles, and take down also the very large statue that I think sits outside of it. I've never been there. I don't know. Never flown into there. But to remove his name from the airport because of an interview he gave in 1971 or something like that. So half a century ago. An interview he gave in Playboy magazine, and he made some comments that are being isolated and honed in on classic out of context story where he said something about I think there's a couple things in it that are being whatever, but specifically something he said about white supremacy. He believes in white supremacy until the black community can be educated responsibly. So what the full context of that article is and what that specific statement is, I encourage people to look into. I think his son came out in defense of him and said it was like an 8-hour interview with Playboy magazine, so on and so forth, and it's being taken out of context. Whatever. So John Wayne is in the news for these things. People want his name removed because how can we recognize a person that has such shocking stances, social stances, or whatever. So now I'll cede the floor to you as your initial response.
Well, my initial response is people need to get over themselves. I mean, when you're dealing with something like that, first of all, as you said, it's like a half a century ago. So you're dealing with a whole different social context which is present. And he's talking within that social context. And then you also have the fact that, I don't know, have any of those people out there that are doing the complaining, have they ever sat through an interview and then looked at the product of that interview?
I think it's funny because
I
it's an interview.
You can't trust what they're going to put right.
I think it's just kind of ironic, if that's the right word, that it's out of Playboy magazine.
Yeah,
it's not like Playboy magazine.
I mean, you can make something out of that if you want to do.
The most wholesome teachings.
Oh,
right?
Come on! Everybody gets Playboy for the articles.
Actually, they were known for having provocative conversation starters, as I understand it. I never subscribed, but I think they did have a reputation for.
For a while there, articles is all they had.
Really?
Yeah, they stopped doing pinup stuff.
Like recently.
Yeah, they're back though. Cause...
Yeah, they're back because you can.
The sales kind of had us
right.
But yeah, so I think it's interesting. I have a question posted up there on our board that says, "In today's climate, can a person safely be recognized for their deeds and achievements?" Yeah, in today's climate, can people who are dynamic, right, and hold many different whatever, and so I'm sort of dismissing in my question. I'm sort of not dismissing, but setting aside why people are up in arms about it. But maybe a better way to put it was, if this is the standards that we want to go by, how many people can honestly be recognized? How many people are faultless out there?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, so many.
Literally have zero faults, and so we should recognize them.
Well, people get their shorts in a tither over the wildest things, and they're not taking into context not even anything about themselves. So they're really being hypocritical, and I just don't think. Like I said, when people come up with this type of stuff, I'm like, get over yourself. First of all, nobody's perfect. Everybody says something at one time or another that if you want to pull it out of context, it, would not be good. So, And while I stand by everything I say...
Well, it's crazy because...
And if somebody said to me, Pastor Monty, you said this 30 years ago, I'd go, yeah, I probably did.
Yeah, it's a real. I think it's a real danger. Sorry, a real danger because of we live in a social media age, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, how long has Facebook been around for now?
10, 15 years.
First part of the
2008.
Yeah,
I want to say
first half of the So 2008. So you have 10 plus years of what people said, and it's recorded, and you can go back and look at it.
Oh yeah.
That's a real threat.
Which politicians don't seem to understand.
Yeah.
Politicians don't know that you can actually go back and look at what they said a couple years ago and fact check against them.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, really?
So, but are you saying that because you said something 30 years ago, it doesn't matter today?
I'm saying that most people speak out of the context of where they are societally, what the demographic is they're dealing with, and what their opinion or their feelings about it are at that time. So you have to ask yourself, do the demographics that we live in change? Does the social context that we live in change? Is it possible that people can modify or even do a 180 on an opinion that they might have at one time in history? That can change also. So we have something which is very fluid and dynamic, not locked in stone. So to say that somebody said something 30 years ago and pull it out of context and put it in today's social dynamic, and then to criticize that individual without looking at it appropriately, no, I don't think that. I think, as I said, I think those people need to get over themselves. And most of the time, this is my observation, most of the time when you fact check these people or you look at where they're coming from, you find out very quickly that they're rather shallow in how it is that they process these things, and they're hypocritical to boot.
I think it's weird how people pick and choose, like, these people, these icons. Like, for example, like, the first person I think of is, like, MLK Jr., right? Like, most people would widely consider him to be, like, at the top level of, Americans who, achieved a lot for, the country and for all the things that he did. But he also has a side to him that is not, widely known or whatever.
I'm not impressed.
As far as, his, what do you call that?
Personal life?
Personal life.
Yeah, MLK had some issues that I would take issue with.
But does that mean... Yeah, and you should, right? But does that mean we dismiss everything else he did? Of course not. So I think it's just interesting. And John Wayne is one of those people. Like, he was, like, recognized by the president, for example, for his achievements and his... for cultural achievements and in his industry and things of that nature. Airport named after him, so on and so forth. But he also... If this is true, like, even if it's within the context of what he said was within a context of that ideology or whatever, like, does that mean we just throw away his achievements and other things? And so I think it's interesting how people, and then is it because he's a white man? Like, but Martin Luther King is a black man, so, like, you don't touch him, but because John, like, so it's just really... It's really weird.
Well, and we have a whole group of people out there that are revisionists, and they want to revisit. They want to rewrite history, and to only keep those things that they feel are important to them.
I just think it's a really dangerous standard, but I think it's a standard that applies across the board even today. I mean, when we look at the personal lives of some of our politicians. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't go to necessarily their political choices, but we look at the personal lives of some of our politicians and we think to ourselves, they're not good politicians because they make personal choices that we disagree with. I think it's very similar, and I think that the history record shows that. I mean, Thomas Jefferson owned slaves. You know what I mean? Mm. So now do we say that he wasn't one of our presidents?
Yeah.
I mean, it just is what it is. And... It's a standard I would never want to be held to. And, like being a pastor, as you both are, it's like we're in the church and we live in a glass house. Mm-hmm. And if you're in a position of leadership, then what an impossible standard to be held to, that you mm-hmm. have to be perfect.
Yeah, I read
and perfect is arbitrary too. Perfect is a social construct. It's not, a biblical one like it should be.
Outside the context of the John Wayne story, I was watching an interview of a soccer coach, and that's part of their job is dealing with media. It's all part of the business, right? And he's pretty outspoken about hating that part of his job because he's asked like these difficult questions on the spot, like that these journalists, for example, have a week to come up with, and he's asked it on the spot and expected to answer perfectly in 30 seconds, or else he's condemned for an answer.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I really, and I'm not saying that exactly applies to his situation, John Wayne, but I sympathize.
Well, not only...
I sympathize for those people. Like, they're asked these questions, and they're supposed to have a fully fleshed out, answer to this question on the spot. Like, it's It's not easy, man.
Well, okay, and and I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but the reality of it is that, he's an actor. He's not an intellectual giant.
I don't know about that.
No. That's true. He didn't have a college education.
Okay, neither did Abraham Lincoln or Bill Gates.
Nonetheless, consider what it is that he does for a living.
What?
And the fact that he reads scripts, he reads and memorizes scripts, and now you're going to hold him to an impossible standard that even social scientists and sociologists would have disagreement on how to approach it. And then added to what you said, and to answer that extemporaneously in a couple of moments, no, it's not fair.
I mean, I agree with you I agree with you that he isn't perhaps a verified expert on the subject, but I think it's a little bit harsh to say that
He can't have
a person who's
stance.
acting just reads scripts.
Oh, I will tell you what. I mean, we look at our current atmosphere with all of these actors and actresses and music personalities wanting to interject on subjects that really they have no qualification to, except that they're famous because of what they do as in their art form. But aside from that, they're unqualified to speak on so many levels. And it's like, all right, I'm okay with you singing, but when you start giving me your philosophical background about how you disagree or agree with something, and you don't know what you're talking about, shut up.
Do we really want to censor the public from having an opinion? Do we really want to say that only social scientists are...
Oh, everybody has an opinion.
Yeah, and everybody's opinion...
And that's my opinion. Shut up.
And everybody's opinion can be informed.
But many times it is not.
Yeah, but...
And I listen to people run commentary all day long.
But judging it on a person's...
And they don't know what they're talking about.
But judging it on a person's profession, their chosen profession, that's a little uninformed.
No.
Yeah, it is.
I'm never uninformed.
Okay. There are plenty of people who have chosen to be actors but are incredibly smart and are incredibly qualified.
Oh, theater actors in particular.
Okay, so then why are you making a statement like that? That statement is incredibly insensitive.
He was not, which I'm known, for my sensitivity. He was not dynamically educated in the area that he was talking about. He was talking about, I already explained this, he was talking within a specific context and a specific area that he had some knowledge of because of his exposure to people in the arts world that he lived in.
But you're saying that off the cuff, right? You haven't studied that John Wayne doesn't know these things. Like, think about, I know he's not everybody's favorite person, but think about Bill Cosby. Like, Bill Cosby has
an earned PhD.
I know, but that wasn't his
PhD.
I know, but that wasn't his chosen profession. And that's my point. You're speaking off the cuff about John Wayne. Do you know that about John Wayne?
I know that he's not a social scientist.
Okay.
This is when you hit the button.
But as I said, Bill Cosby has an earned PhD in education.
Yeah, I think he's got a couple.
He's got several honorary degrees, but aside from that, he's very well educated. So they're not even the same.
Well, that's my point, is that without actually knowing, you can't make a statement about actors. It takes a lot for just so you know, as one who is a part of Troop 75 of the National Thespian Society. It takes a lot.
So it comes out.
Yeah, it comes out. Yes. No, it absolutely comes out. I'm a person who has authoritative knowledge of acting. Okay,
I've
so
done my
as
share
as
of
it,
acting.
but
I'm
see,
not unknown
but you're
in
not
the
a
acting
verified actor, as you would say.
Well, because in my day we didn't have thespian society.
That's not true. So maybe your school didn't have it, but in any case, as somebody who has been verified as an actor with over 100 hours in theater, I can tell you that actors are oftentimes very, very, very smart.
Well, I know that you said that to try to impress me.
No, it's not to try to impress you.
But my overall response is, I'm not impressed.
Okay. John Parker says it's a ridiculous and impossible standard. No one is perfect, and nothing is "quote unquote" private anymore with the digital age that we live in.
Yeah, John Parker's right.
Yep. Okay, moving on. You had said something just a moment ago that it would have been a more perfect segue, but that's okay. All right, let's maybe not jump right into that topic. Our defending champ said he's up to square off.
Okay.
You on Michael
That should be
Jackson
fun.
trivia.
That should be fun.
That's what I told him. I said good luck. So what else we got up here? The Office. We can probably hit that quickly.
Sure.
So an article came out. What source was that? The New Republic? No, that's Michael Jackson. The Federalist. So article came out. Which jokes from The Office are problematic in today's climate? All of them is. All of them is the person's answer.
All the good ones.
The answer is all of them, and also none of them. There.
I'll post the article.
Yeah, I'll post an article. I'll read a snippet. There can be no tongue-in-cheek list of offensive scenes because you either recognize Michael Scott or Dwight Schrute or Todd Packer or Kevin or, etc., Andy Bernard. Either you recognize that as satire or you don't. And if you don't, The Office is just a 9-season platform for naked bigotry, which is true. So the question is the show's legacy... and this will segue into MJ here, is the show's legacy in danger due to the shifting cultural acceptances and stuff? What do you guys think? And like I said, we touched on this briefly last season, early on.
Well, what are we asking? Is the show is the show's legacy in
If you
danger
recall,
of being looked at differently over the course of history?
Yeah, received
of course.
differently. I think Steve Carell said himself last year, and probably this is what
That he doesn't want to
prompted
go
us,
back into it.
that he doesn't think it could even be made. Like even they'd be talked about being made. Like it wouldn't even make it that far. Like I have this show and it's about this guy.
Well, it barely survived its first season. On top of that, it came at the right time. So
the American version.
the American version, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, it's in danger of, The Office is certainly not. It certainly doesn't have a monolithic following in American culture. I mean, it is, as far as we've been told, like on Netflix, it's like the #1 show that's streamed, and it has a huge following. I was talking to Gio on the streets.
We need to bring that back.
Yeah, we need to get a hold of Gio. Maybe we can call him up. But I was talking to Gio, he just graduated from high school, so he should be in his first year of college.
He's almost there.
Yeah, and he just turned 18. He just turned 18. My bad.
Yeah.
Our boy's grown up. I just talked to Gio, and he was saying that everybody in his age group watches The Office. They watch it streaming, and it ended 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's not everybody likes The Office. I know some people who don't, but it's usually because they haven't actually tried. But with that said, it's it's not so classic that it can't be erased from history. It didn't win the Revolutionary War or something.
My disclaimer would be that I've never watched a full episode of The Office.
That's really your loss.
Aside from that, I don't think so. But there are a couple of things.
Oh, that's not supposed to be a joke.
No, that's not
okay.
true. I've never watched a full episode of The Office.
How appropriate. Something that wasn't supposed to be a joke was a joke.
Yep.
But
The Office, everyone.
aside from that, there are two things which our society is drifting more and more towards. And the first thing is that not only is the office in danger as a show that uses satire as a social mechanism, but stand-up comedy is also in that same area.
We've totally touched on this before. Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
Because two things that people don't understand in society today are satire and hyperbole.
It was an older comic who said, it was Mel Brooks who said something very similar about a year ago.
Yeah, yeah, and so I think that programs like The Office, which I know people that love it. But,
it's like everyone you look at, right?
Every time I turn around, one of my sons is constantly telling me, "Oh, Dad, you got to check out." Yeah, I'm like, really, I don't got time for that nonsense.
You should make time.
But the reality is, well, I'll take the History Channel over The Office any day.
Right. Well, at least The Office knows that it's fake.
Well, yes, that's true. But you will always have closet office people who, even if it becomes socially unpopular and is not accepted amongst and is not
I'm a closeted office fan.
yeah and is not
I like the ridiculous nature of these characters and how
it's not
so
amongst it's true, and it's not amongst the the people who govern what is accepted socially or not socially, the little social memes out there. But the reality of it is you will always have closet office people, and it may be at some point driven to just be a cultic type thing. But
just a cult following.
Yeah, and there are things in the arts and the social media that take on that motif. For example, you're familiar with you may not be, but you're familiar, Josh, with the Rocky Horror Show.
Of course,
my aunt loved that movie.
Cult following, clearly not mainstream, but people who you talk to. I've known people that have seen it 10, 20 times. They just love it.
It's really popular here in Portland.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea why it's popular.
It would be here in Portland.
This is an interesting snippet from that Office article.
All my theater friends were into it. They'd go every night at midnight. Every weekend at midnight.
Yeah. This is talking about the dilemma, quote unquote, in making Michael Scott a likable character despite his obvious flaws. The effect of making Michael likable is that he illustrates how good people are capable of horrible, outdated behavior. That's actually a timely lesson, given the growing impulse to dismiss anyone who's ever committed a thought crime from polite society.
It's true.
So, sort of a consider this,
That's I mean, that was a problem that they ran into at the end of the first season. Now, this is more trivial knowledge, but yeah, the first season's only 6 episodes long, I think, and it because it was a mid-season filler, and Michael Scott was really unlikable because he just was a terrible person.
Bad guy.
He was a bad boss.
Yeah,
and so they retold him in the second season to be more childlike, and so he was a lot more naive, and he just kind of wanted to do the right thing, but he sucked at it. And I think that
did the wrong thing,
and that's the thing. Michael Scott is an everyman in that regard.
Well, I think for me the difficulty is that I spent, and if you're in the private sector, then a lot of people like The Office because they can see similarities to what they experience on a daily basis.
Sure, all the archetypes are there
in their own work. Being a government worker. And for the last 15 years of my career, being pretty much on my own, I didn't go into the office unless I had to, and so I was in the field most of the time, and only went into the office once or twice a week. So I never really experienced those types of things. And if my boss and I had issues, I would put him in his place, and then leave. Because I didn't have to deal with him.
He chose poorly.
Well, he did chose poorly if he chose to mess with me. There's more than once that I would tell my boss that, I've forgotten more than you know, so don't push me.
That's a great line.
I've never sat in an office setting. I just like it because it's absolutely ridiculous. I'll be honest. The inappropriate person that Michael Scott is lives deep inside my soul. So there's a little boy version of me, and his name is Michael Scott.
Okay, there you go.
Two things. We should do our trivia thing, but first, can they see this? I just realized this was playing.
Yeah, in fact, John Parker commented on it.
Yeah.
No. It's Max Fleischer's Superman.
Okay.
It's a good thing we don't receive money for the show because we could probably be like sued or something for profiting off of showing someone else's material. All right, so defending champ is going to get phoned in for Michael Jackson trivia since Michael Jackson is the trending topic.
Who's playing?
His name is Greg.
Oh, is he playing against us, or is he playing
against you?
Playing against you.
Oh, me?
He's playing against you.
Oh,
hello,
geez.
Greg. Greg, tell us a little about yourself real quick. You're the defending champ.
Yes.
And where are you from, Greg?
I am from sunny Southern California.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, thanks for phoning in, if you will. So, Michael Jackson trivia is what's on the books today, considering that's what's
everything.
That's what's trending in the news. So that's what we go for. What's relevant? So you're going to be up against co-host Josh here, who is has a thorough knowledge of Michael Jackson. We'll just put it that way.
Just pop culture in general.
So let me ask you: is he wearing a sparkly glove as we speak?
No,
yes.
He's wearing a Batman shirt and glasses. So maybe I'll give you.
And those aren't sparkles, Greg. They're sequins.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. What is the name of the skin? Oh wait. Kick us off with the right. With the right sound. Oh yes. You can't hear it right now, probably, but your favorite time to play the game is playing. Time to play the game. Exactly. All right. First question. During which performance did Michael Jackson do the moonwalk?
Motown 25.
Time? We're looking for a song name.
Billie Jean.
Billie Jean. That's correct. Off to a flying start, Greg. What is the name of the skin condition?
Vitiligo.
Okay.
Vitiligo.
Sorry, he beat you to that one too. Before I can even finish the question, whom did Michael Jackson?
I'm sorry. Who got it?
Josh got it. Sorry, he answered before I even finished the question. Okay, here we go. Whom did Michael Jackson teach to dance in the video for Jam?
Macaulay Culkin.
Wrong.
Oh!
I'll give Greg an option.
Oh, okay. I totally know who this is.
He was the kid that was in the documentary. I can't remember his name.
No.
It is Macaulay Culkin. Well, Macaulay Culkin is absolutely in that video, but do you want to know? I'll tell you. The person's Michael Jordan.
Yes, Michael Jordan.
But I got it wrong.
Oh, okay.
But it is Macaulay Culkin's the kid in the video.
Yes. Okay. Let's see. How many Michael Jackson songs were parodied by Weird Al Yankovic?
Oh, jeez. Yeah, that seems right. Is that right?
Very close.
4.
Wrong way.
Oh.
2.
So what is it? It's
and what
Eat
are
It
they?
and Fat.
Eat It and Fat. Which parody what?
Beat It and Bad.
Beat it
Yep.
and
Bad. Yeah. True or false? This is your best chance to get one, Greg. True or false? True or false? Michael Jackson was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame not once but twice.
True.
Okay.
Yeah, true. Jackson 5, right?
Yeah,
Jackson
true.
5 and Michael Jackson.
It wasn't a shutout. Thank you for that.
Exactly.
You are a gentleman and a scholar.
Yes. With whom did Michael Jackson co-write "We Are the World"?
Oh.
Very famous songwriter.
Right.
Relevant.
Quincy Jones?
No.
I know this. I totally know this.
He remains relevant today.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I'll give you a big hint. He's currently on a show.
Oh, Lionel Richie.
Lionel Richie. Yes.
Yeah.
Lionel Richie. He's on American Idol right now as a judge. What happened to Michael Jackson during the filming of a Pepsi commercial in 1984?
He fell down the stairs and got fired.
He was on fire.
His hair caught fire.
It did after he fell down the stairs.
Josh wants to argue that he gave the full description of what happened.
That's
not just
right.
He caught on fire.
And that's when he had his first plastic surgery.
And that's when he had his first plastic surgery, which wasn't even a trivia question, but Josh answered it anyways.
I'm a child of the 80s, what can I say?
All right. Okay, 2 more questions. Michael Jackson was raised which religious denomination?
Jehovah's Witness?
Nope. Yep, Josh got it. Yeah. He answered reluctantly with Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's a Southern Baptist.
Last.
He grew up in, Indiana, right?
Gary,
yeah,
Indiana.
Gary.
Yep.
I think he died Nation of Islam, though. I don't know, though.
Last question. So let me just say before we end the game, it was a valiant effort, but you came nowhere close to winning from beautiful sunny California. So enjoy your sunny weather, but you are not a Michael Jackson expert.
You need to do Rush trivia.
Rush trivia.
Well, when Rush becomes relevant again, perhaps.
What?
Oh. Here we go.
The only thing I know of Rush is from I Love You, Man.
Yeah. Final question. Michael Jackson contributed a song to which movie soundtrack?
I mean, there's a lot. Ben, The Wiz, Captain EO.
I'll give you the multiple choice.
Okay.
Beverly Hills Cop, Ghostbusters, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, E.T.
Really?
Really? Huh.
Ghostbusters.
That was my guess too, but that's wrong.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know
not Star Wars.
I know I know that he loved E.T.
Oh, he didn't do the Imperial March?
No, that actually wasn't him.
I have no idea.
E.T.
Oh, it was E.T.
It is
Okay,
E.T.
yeah. See, I knew he
Yeah.
loved E.T.
All right. Well, thanks for phoning in to try and defend your title. Maybe we'll let you keep the title since Josh shouldn't be allowed to hold it since he's a co-host.
That's true.
The podcast will discuss what should be done about this.
Okay.
Well, you know what? I'm happy with you shut up. So you just threw me a bone. Thank you again.
Yeah. All right. Have a great day.
All right, thanks, Mike.
So,
all right.
Josh knows a bit about Michael Jackson. All right. So
I know pop culture. All of those things
you
are very
are also
pop
a
culture.
huge Michael Jackson fan.
I
It's
mean,
true. Most of those things are pop culture.
there are
related.
huge Michael Jackson fans, and then there are just people who retain. I am a Michael Jackson fan in the sense of I am a fan of Star Trek. I'm a fan of comic books. I'm a fan of everything.
Okay.
All of my wells are deep.
Nice. And that's what she said. Going into the trending. Wow. Going into the trending topic.
Please, no!
Yeah.
No!
Oh, hey.
No!
Michael Jackson.
Okay,
So
here we go.
continuing the story from last podcast and the talk of the town for the last month.
Right.
There's documentary Leaving Neverland. It is about these 2 guys who have come out and re-accused Michael Jackson of the same thing that he was acquitted for several years ago. And yeah, where do we start? There's a lot that goes into this. The basic question that we want to get to, recycled conversation from earlier in the week: how do we process this story from a Christian worldview? How do we discern truth? How do we know that what was presented years ago is different than what is presented now? Like, how do we discern what is true in this whole thing? So what's the deal with this Leaving Neverland documentary, right? It's about this kid, or he's a man now.
2 guys.
Previously testified in defense.
Right.
At least one of them. I don't know about the other guy, the Safe Chuck guy. I don't know about him. But the other one previously testified in defense of Michael Jackson when his trial was going on. He has since been one of the people doing this documentary. He wants his story to be told now. It's finally time for him to get it out, along with this other man. Same thing. And the I guess argument for these guys is that then we didn't live in a time where you could have your story be heard, you know? It was back then it was Michael Jackson's story versus these kids' story, so on and so forth. But now, you know, society, the culture is ready to, and this is due to, you know, just the same thing 2017 with the Harvey Weinstein thing and everything that's come out since then. It's sort of along the same thing. You know, now people are more receptive, if you will, to people's stories, and they, you know, they're willing to give it more credit. What's the problem with this whole thing? Sort of, let's start there.
Well, I think it's not untrue, first of all, the idea that your story couldn't be heard as well as it can be.
Sure. So let's start with that premise as well. Like, this whole thing, and where we are now as in society, it's dynamic, right? It's not one or the other.
You definitely had to fight more for your story to be heard back then in the late 80s, early 90s. But that being said, if your story was sound, it got heard. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And I'm also going to say that the right people were listening. And this is a thing that, I mean, you know, living in the 90s and being fairly aware of things back then. So I think I was 13 when, so that was like the height of Michael Jackson's popularity. The height of Michael Jackson's popularity, and it was, well, maybe it wasn't the height because that was the 80s. Anyway, but he was still incredibly popular and really well known. And it was like, when that came out, people were ready to crucify him. Absolutely. I mean, everybody was shocked about it, but they were ready to crucify him because he was a weirdo. And that's the era that they call, you know, the wacko jacko era. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that it was as, I don't think that they were as unheard as they make themselves.
Presenting.
Yeah, as presented. But that doesn't matter, because whether a person's guilty or not is not enforced by the public. We don't live by mob rule. Mm-hmm. So,
thank God.
Yeah. So here's the thing. They were heard by the right people. You know, the FBI, I think the Santa Barbara or Santa Monica, I can't remember. One of the
These kinds of multi-agency
investigations for 10 years. And they're still being heard today. Like, there's still people who are accusing where it's being investigated. So I would disagree that their voice wasn't meaningful. And I think that's what's being said.
Yeah.
I think what's being said is that because they weren't heard and on the face of it accepted, then their voice wasn't significant or meaningful. That I reject. Did they get heard by? Did they get listened to by? Did they get listened to by the people that they have now? Did they have the platform that they do now to speak without having any sort of input? No. You absolutely have that now. And that's one of the chaoses that we have in the industry in general. You have the upsetters like YouTube, where everybody has a voice. You have the upsetters like blogs and WordPress and things like that, where everybody's a critic. You have the upsetters like cameras on your phones, where everybody's a photographer. Mm-hmm. There's, you know, so there's absolutely no question that your story can be heard more now than it was before. But was their story not meaningful or significant? Did the right people not listen to it? Were they completely ignored? No, that's absolutely untrue.
Well, and it's confusing from the get-go, like I said, because half of the party here was the other way, you know, swung in defense. So,
right. I think they both did.
Really?
But...
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. But so already it's like, wait, what? Didn't you guys, why is it different now? Another thing worth noting, and I don't think either of us, any of us, have seen it.
I haven't watched it.
Yeah, this new documentary on HBO. But we've all read about it and heard about it extensively. This documentary is apparently very one-sided. Like, it's very one-sided. Unapologetically. They're, like, outspoken that they didn't want to interview anyone else. They didn't want any sort of objective angles to be whatever, you know what I mean? They didn't want any sort of secondary sources or whatever. It's purely their story.
Sure, and they didn't want fact checked.
Yeah, they didn't want anything like that. And so now we have a decision, if you will, to make. Like, do we take the 10-year, like you said, multi-agency, thorough investigation as truth, and is that what we're going to operate off of? That he was innocent, he was acquitted of these crimes. Yes, he was very eccentric. Yes, he was weird. Yes, he probably invited a lot of perceptions onto himself by the way he lived and choices he made and stuff. But in regards to the crimes he was accused of, he was found innocent. Are we going to accept that, or are we going to accept two people story as truth now? So how do we...
Okay, so this thing is so multi-layered that you know, you can kind of pick and choose what you want to. I mean, I'm in total agreement with what, you know, Josh had to say in regard to the...
your story heard.
You know, the story... Well, clearly there has been a cultural shift, and my observation is that there are elements in our society today, those that are on the far left in their philosophy of how they approach things, that they will throw out a false narrative just to see if somebody will
if it sticks.
Yeah, just to see if it'll stick, and just to see if somebody will come alongside them and say, yeah, I'm all about that. And I mean, we saw it in the extreme. For example, during the Kavanaugh hearings, but the reality of it is that we've got people throwing out these false narratives all the time, and you have to ask yourself this question. Again, right on target. You know, he was, you know, this went to trial, and it was through the court system, multi investigations, and this individual is. Stated one thing under oath during the trial, and now is coming out with the complete opposite. So you have to ask yourself, and either way discredits what you're saying. Were you a liar then, or are you a liar now? And then you also have to ask yourself the question, what is your motive? So, you know, I'm willing to this is pure speculation here, but I'm willing to speculate that this documentary was not done for HBO for free.
Well, I mean, HBO bought it.
You mean the guy benefited financially from it?
I don't know.
Yes, likely he did. And
I don't know. I don't think he did. I don't think he did, but I know that there's like...
I'd be willing to speculate that he did. And
I've heard that there's like book deals involved.
And that's my whole point. That's my whole point. Is that he's going to take this false narrative that he doesn't want fact-checked. So he doesn't want to... He's just going to throw something out there. And he's got there is a financial angle to it. And when you weigh all of those things together... they really work to discredit anything that the guy has to say. And from a biblical perspective, when we go into Scripture and we look at how it is, you know, you had to have, under Jewish law, you had to have 2 to 3 witnesses that collaborate the assertion and that it could be verified before you were found guilty of a transgression. And from a biblical perspective, in the New Testament, particularly against leaders in the church, the same standard exists. And this nonsense of people throwing out whatever is just rampant in our society today. The illustration would be, you know, what we've been through the last 2 years with the Mueller investigation on the political side.
I mean,
no, my point very quickly is this: no collusion was involved with Donald Trump and the in his campaign, but there is hard documented evidence that there was plenty of collusion by the Democrats.
So, going back to Michael Jackson,
Which is the false narrative.
I think that it's just a really multifaceted issue. For me, the question that I ask myself in regard to his legacy is, what if he is guilty?
Well, he's dead, so he's already stood judgment.
Okay,
Yeah,
but the
how
question
should we receive
right?
his
The question I ask
music,
myself,
his impact,
right? I think that there is
How do we process
absolutely no doubt. There's no doubt in my mind that if he was guilty, it would have come out already because of the level of scrutiny in which he was under from like multiple agencies, as we've talked about through multiple years. That being said, so I don't believe that he's guilty. But even if he was guilty, how do we look at his work? And so I look at somebody whose work. So when I'm thinking about this, I look at somebody whose work, like take Roman Polanski, right? I look at somebody whose work who has been convicted, and what is my stance on that? So Roman Polanski, he was convicted of, I think it was pedophilia, essentially.
Yes,
raped
and in
raped a young girl.
absentia, yes.
And then
Yeah.
he fled the country.
Right, he
Yes.
fled the country after he was convicted, before he could go to prison, and so, but his, his movies are still being made; they're still being shown over here.
He won an Oscar.
He won an
for The
Oscar
Pianist,
while
and
he
then,
was for
standing
Pianist.
ovation.
Yep. Same thing with Woody Allen.
Mm-hmm.
So like
R. Kelly,
to
name a
I just don't. I know people are like connecting R. Kelly, but I just don't think R. Kelly is as prolific as people think he is. I just don't. I don't get it. I don't personally get R. Kelly.
I never heard of him until this whole thing.
Have you heard the song "I Believe I Can Fly"?
No.
Ignition remix.
Okay.
No.
In the closet.
Give me a country western. Has he done any country at all?
Yeah.
I tried to throw you John Wayne, and you threw him back at me. So no more country western for you.
Listen, if I have the chance to listen to Burt Bacharach or Michael Jackson, I'm going to listen to Michael Jackson.
Burt Bacharach. That is
That's
a
right.
deep dive.
Anyways, as you were saying, like Woody Allen, for example.
All right, so you got these people who actually, well, I guess Woody Allen wasn't convicted, but it was like a known thing. Like, anyway, he admitted that he had this relationship.
Yeah, he's a little on the strange side.
But
too.
anyway, you have these people who are cultural, let's call them pillars, pop culture pillars in society. They're part of the lexicon. If you remove them, the lexicon collapses, right? So you have these people. Michael Jackson's definitely one of them. And what are our thoughts on that? I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with like Thomas Jefferson, for say. Mm-hmm. It's like, do you remove Thomas Jefferson because he was a slave owner? Like, do you remove him from American history? If you do, American history collapses. I think it's better to relegate those things if they even are true. So you have the one side where you have to be careful with it, and then the other side with what do you do with it on a moral level.
Yeah.
I think that you have to relegate those things to, at the very worst, you have to relegate them to being a museum piece, right? So it's like it's a collected piece that goes in a museum where people understand. And so what I mean by that is, like, let's say in Germany, this goes back to the statues too, but like in Germany, I don't believe that you get rid of every instance of Nazism in Germany. I think you put it in a museum and you put a big fat warning on it.
Right, and then you do a Don Wilder can do a show about it under Mysteries of the Museum.
Okay.
And then, so this is where I play.
Please, no! 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 No!
So I think you do that, but and that's if you know that somebody's guilty. So it's the twofold, right? And so for me, I don't really understand because I don't think he's guilty based on the evidence. I think I have to hold that level for guilt, or then everyone is guilty. If everyone's guilty, then why does it matter? That's the thing. Everybody, you can deep dive into everybody. Everybody's guilty of something.
Not even deep dive. You don't have to go
Right.
that deep.
Well, and then you don't, and we haven't. You haven't even begun to get into the
Eccentricities.
eccentricities, and what they're developed out of. Because this, you got to have lots and lots and lots of sympathy for this guy that really had no childhood at all, or very, very warped. Mm-hmm. And that people don't even talk about that to explain some of the weirdness that was there and how he transitioned from childhood into adulthood. That doesn't even come
never
into
really
play.
did.
I don't agree with excusing his.
I'm not excusing him. I'm saying that people go through a normal process of behavior and development, socially and psychologically, and he was clearly underdeveloped.
Yes, but if he did do that, it wouldn't be an excuse. It'd just be an explanation.
And that's what I'm saying. It is an explanation. Nonetheless, the reality of it is that I agree with what you're saying, that, the weight of evidence, which has already been weighed and examined for years and years and years, is that he is not guilty of what he's being accused of. And the reality of it is we have this now individual who stands to profit I'm going to speculate again, who stands to profit in some form, making this false narrative. And was he a liar then, or is he a liar now?
Yeah. So for me, what happens is, if we allow that sort of ideology, like in regard to Michael Jackson, if we allow that sort of ideology, so he's like a pillar of pop culture, right? If we allow that ideology to grab hold of us, where somebody is essentially guilty until proven innocent, even though our best attempts, our concerted and aggressive best attempts from multiple agencies, and the weight of public opinion weigh against the evidence.
What was that line I read? There are points where the apparently irresistible force of moral outrage runs into immovable objects of cultural history.
Right. If we do that, then I feel like what we're game for is a sort of societal chaos, right? Because, like I said, then everything, every little thing becomes the biggest thing possible, and that may seem, again, what Michael Jackson is accused of. Do not get me wrong; that is not a little thing. Jackson is accused of is not a little thing, but because of how it's being played against the weight of the things that are pushing against it, it's being treated as if it has more power than evidence. And when things have more power than evidence, then you have no standard for truth. And when there's no standard for truth, then everything becomes dangerous. That is not a pun. Everything becomes bad. That is. And then everything is a thriller. No.
I'm with you.
Wow.
Nice.
All of a sudden, everything's off the wall.
Trifecta.
All of a sudden, everything's off the wall. And if I can throw a fifth one in there, it'd be the Jackson 5. I think that and what people don't understand. Wow. Joseph Jesse just said, typing this up on my new used iPhone 7. Welcome to 2016, Joe. Welcome to 2016, Joe. I think that...
Can't wait for you to get to 2019.
Right? 3 years to go. I think that it becomes super problematic. Like, hyper problematic. And the thing that people don't understand is when they deconstruct reality this way, when they deconstruct reality to the point where nothing has any meaning, because when it's weighed against our best understanding of truth and it's viewed as inappropriate still, or not even true still, even though it's weighed against our best understanding of truth, then that means truth has no meaning. And then we get back into the Ouroboros conversation, right? Where eventually that demon that you've created by allowing truth to be by allowing your best understanding of truth to be outweighed by your feelings will come back on you. That's the truth.
And the reality of it is that we have a fringe element of society who is very vocal, who is pushing this exact agenda. And we see more and more on so many levels the idea that that is exactly what is happening.
The loudest is true.
Well, and it does. It is a fringe element of society in most cases that are pushing this agenda. A really good example of that is what's going on in the United Methodist Church.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we don't cover that right now in this particular program, but to give you context for what I'm talking about, even within the church itself, in the United Methodist Church, there was a vote that just took place. And it was shut down. They were trying to make LGBTQIA pastors acceptable within the United Methodist Church. I'll be honest, I thought they already were. And that's because most of them they can choose what they want to, but they were trying to make it part of that vote. And it got shot down. It got shot down because the majority of the church doesn't actually believe that. It's a small percentage.
Right.
And that's the same case with a lot of things that are like that way, where we have this idea that whatever is popular, like if it's in Hollywood or whatever, it actually represents the majority because they are the vocal majority.
Right.
So, but that's not the case, and we have to be really discerning about that.
Mm-hmm. You said something earlier in the week that I think is interesting, and I'll allow you to re-say it.
No,
I
don't know if my memory's good enough.
It's simple, and I think it's interesting regarding Michael Jackson. If he were true, a song like "Man in the Mirror."
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, here's my thing. Okay, if Michael Jackson did commit those crimes,
which we don't operate on the premise that they are true.
I don't think that we can responsibly. That's a really important point.
But
if Michael Jackson did commit those crimes, then I think that it doesn't cheapen his work. And here's my example for that. You take a song like "Man in the Mirror," which is off the album Bad, like 1987, I think, or 86, and it's arguably one of the best songs ever written, both melodically and lyrically and so on and so forth, right? It's deep, and people have come to really appreciate that song. And so now people want to throw away his catalog and pretend that it never existed, not based on evidence, but they want to do that. But what does that say about "Man in the Mirror"? Because "Man in the Mirror" is a very, it's an empathetic song to humanity, and it's a sympathetic song from humanity. Everybody can relate to "Man in the Mirror." Yes, even women can relate to "Man in the Mirror." The idea that we are overlooking things in our lives that are terrible. Now, let me ask you a question. If a person who had gone to prison wrote "Man in the Mirror," somebody who was convicted of a crime wrote "Man in the Mirror," what would that say about that person? That would say that person who was convicted of a crime understood that something was deeply wrong about them, deeply troubling about who they are, and that they needed to make a change from the way that they had been. To me, that gives a much more profound meaning to the character of the person who wrote that song.
Yeah, and so that...
Not to say that we should imply that into the song that Michael Jackson's actually talking about,
but
molesting little kids.
It's against the argument that you should now take his music off air. You should remove episodes of this from this show. Don't play any music on this radio station.
That his music doesn't have any positive meaning. It's just not true.
Completely.
Artists are, again, I'm not excusing it, okay? Artists are eccentric people. I'm not excusing when they do things that are heinous, and there are plenty who do things that are heinous. We don't take the Marquis de Sade's work off the shelves, even though the word sadism comes from the Marquis de Sade because he was a jacked up person. Okay? We don't take his work off the shelves. We give standing ovations to Roman Polanski. What are we talking about here when we are willing to do that? When we're willing to do that and pretend that it didn't exist. We're talking about a new level of censorship. To me, that is no different than when the Nazis book burned in order to rewrite the history, because they understood that the best way to destroy an idea was to rewrite history. If we're against that, then how can we be for Michael Jackson being removed from history? Part 1 and Part 2. There's another reference. That's a really terrible thing. And if that can be done to him, a man who is not convicted, what will be done to you? That's a really important thing to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I think that's the reality of what many people are going to be facing is what can you can you take away of having any security if you've lived your life. Okay, Michael Jackson obviously had some, eccentricities that people focused in on. But what about the average person out there that just lives their life and tries to mind their own business? And absolutely anybody can make an accusation or create a false narrative without any proof whatsoever and can destroy people's lives. And we're coming to that point where that's exactly what's beginning to happen.
Yeah.
Is that, this is happening on so many levels, but that is because of where our society has gone philosophically, and the idea of a standard of truth no longer exists today as we drift into narcissism and nihilism.
Yeah, it's a very dangerous time, whether Michael Jackson committed those crimes or not. The fact that essentially, whether Michael Jackson committed those crimes or not, the fact that essentially people don't care.
Yeah, and we touch on it all the time. Like, it just takes one little type, if we're talking about today, one little tweet. Oh yeah, I heard Michael Jackson did this, and a retweet and a retweet and a retweet, and then like what? And then it's not even like can destroy someone's life because people will see that, and people that don't, aren't up on the news and don't do their diligence and stuff, like that is just true because I saw it out there, and so now exactly. Now he's tarnished like unfairly and without proof, and just because one person said something once, and that could happen to you if we keep going in this same way.
Yeah, and let me be clear.
It
yes,
will destroy your life and your reputation,
or the history of your work. Let me be clear. I do not think that Michael Jackson did it, but I am absolutely for the presentation of evidence that he did.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Sure. I mean,
and I'm open to believing it too.
But again, though, it's hard with this thing because they are unapologetic about not wanting to produce any. And
that says something that speaks to their credibility right up front.
Right, but in this generation it doesn't, and that's where we get into really dangerous territory, and I'm really scared for the generation that my children are growing up in.
I agree.
Critical thought is a very, very important piece of the puzzle that's being left behind. They don't care whether he did it or not. He is a freak, and because of that, he is crucified. Mm-hmm. It's that simple.
Yeah.
By the way, side note to not end on that note.
Please.
John Parker just posted a link to R. Kelly.
An episode of SpongeBob SquarePants.
No. He posted a link to R. Kelly doing a country song.
For you.
Thank you, John Parker.
Is this for real?
Yeah. This is R. Kelly doing Barely Breathing. No Conway twitting.
I'm really weirded out by this. It is very country.
Would you listen to this?
I'd listen to it. It wouldn't, I wouldn't turn it off. I'd listen to it.
I wouldn't turn it off. Let's put it that way.
Does it have enough twang in it for you?
But I wouldn't go out and buy
Find it. Yeah, buy it.
It has no Conway Twitty, but the album is called The Buffet.
Okay, and so because it's a buffet, he's including country in there.
That's hilarious. Thanks, John.
Yeah, thanks, John. Appreciate it.
We do.
John notes that the Care quote unquote, is fleeting, he'd be interested to see if people are still aware or talking about these movements in 3 to 5 years. We didn't talk about it. Maybe we can on the next show, but I'm thinking about The Simpsons and how they are saying that in no publication and no streaming are they ever going to show that Michael Jackson
again, right? Yeah.
Episode again. I'd be interested to come back and revisit this topic and see if and see what this is like in 6 months.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I think you can make an argument that people will be talking about it in 3 to 5 to 50 years if you're John Wayne. What will the new accusation be? What will be the new problem with this person?
Maybe with the Ouroboros effect, people won't talk about it because everything is that way. Yeah, so then nothing is actually relevant. What do you mean Michael Jackson molested boys? What difference does that make?
Everything is nothing.
As long as you feel that you can molest children, that's love.
We were supposed to end on R. Kelly's country,
Sorry.
dude.
Here, we can end on this.
Just end it on
we can end on this. Joseph Jesse just said, perhaps our resident adjunct professor of finances can help us with this analogy. Joseph Jesse just said, country music is the equivalent of moving from stocks to bonds.
From stocks.
What does that mean? Joseph Jesse, I have no idea what that means.
I'm not sure what Joe has in mind when he states that, except that obviously bonds are much safer than stocks, and you have an established interest rate at maturity.
So you're retwisting what Joseph said.
So basically, you're saying country music is safer.
Well, no,
Go out and
it
get
is
some
safer,
bonds.
and it goes back to the issue that within on the two coasts.
We should fade to black as Pastor Monty is talking about this.
On the two coasts is where you're going to find all this alternative and weird music.
Topics, or just
throughout the rest of history, throughout the rest of the country, country music
on Facebook comments. No, seriously. If you're interested in what we're talking about today, check out the stories, check out the comments on the Facebook video, the Facebook comments section. If you have something you're interested in, as always, feel free to submit your proposal for what we talk about on the next episode on our Facebook page at Culture and Sanity. And then if you're completely new to your faith or to Christ or the Bible, you can check out the help tab on abfpdx.org. What's going on tomorrow? What time? Tomorrow we're hosting something here at Aletheia Bible Fellowship that will probably be streamed.
Tomorrow? The 17th? I don't think
Sunday?
so. You're thinking of the 24th.
Hey, we're not
I'm a week off?
nothing.
Yeah, you're a week off.
I'm a week off. The 24th. We
Tomorrow's
have
Irish Day.
a young... Yeah,
I don't even know.
Stop that. We
Please,
have
no,
our first
no.
episode of the Young Lectern series.
Oh, yeah, Tiles. Tiles is coming up, the Young
Yeah.
Lectern series. Yeah, that's on the 24th. We have a young woman, Caitlin Ebert. She is going to be discussing... Caitlin Ebert from Prince of Peace, not endorsed, who's going to be...
Wow.
She's of her own. The views expressed in this Tiles event do not express the views of
Aletheia Bible Fellowship.
Prince of Peace.
Prince of Peace.
But
Aletheia.
so she is going to be discussing naturalism, which is basically Darwinian evolution, and going to be talking about basically her views on that in regard to Christianity. And so we just want to give young people who feel like they have something to say that's meaningful and is doctrinally sound, the opportunity to come talk about that. We'll be having a couple of those a year, just young people talking about things from a very serious standpoint. We want to give them that platform. So that's what Tiles is. Mm-hmm. That's the 24th at 7. We'll be streaming that. You can watch that here on Culture and Sanity or any of our other sister podcasts.
Speaking of Truth Time with Pastor Monty, Tuesdays at 11. Yep, every week. Look forward to that. Look forward to the daily Burstcast Monday through Friday on Instagram, but I believe they're on Facebook as well. I think Facebook owns Instagram, so
yeah,
they get shared both ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, next month, April, CrossX is on church racism.
Yeah, that should be interesting. We're dealing with intersectionality and whether there's
the end of
racism in the church. Yeah, this month. Yeah.
It's the end of this month,
You're right.
the 31st.
You're right.
So we're doing Tiles next week, and then the week after we're doing cross-examination.
Full plates. So look forward to that, 7 p.m. hosted
here at Aletheia.
Yeah.
You can tune in at 7 o'clock also, and Pastor Monty joins the
Busy guy.
the thing. We need to get the Smash Brothers, a new challenger approaches
totally.
that,
Anyways, so thanks for tuning in. Thanks for downloading. Thanks for listening. And we'll catch you in 2 weeks. Out.
The views presented in this program are not meant to express the specific views of the Aletheia Bible Fellowship. You are listening to the Vigilance Radio Network.